now our next speaker is the one who can teach any startup to swim not only with dolphins, but also with the sharks. Please put your hands together for Val Jerdes. Val, please go to the stage. The floor is yours.
Добрый день. Hello to everybody. Good to see you. Hello, Kyiv. Very, very exciting to be back. This is a huge, огромный зал. Last year we were here. It was much more intimate. It was very thoughtful. So I'm sure it will be just as thoughtful, if not bigger. So, доброе утро всем. I just literally arrived to Kyiv from my home in Silicon Valley, where we've spent pretty much all of our lives working with startups, working with investors, and the 5 people I have in my small partnership group work primarily with governments. So we help governments build ecosystems, startup ecosystems. Very exciting work. We go very much under the radar. We are not a big, loud group. We go in, we do the job, and we come out. And most recently, because I speak Russian a little bit, and a little bit of Ukrainian, a little bit of Polish, and a little bit of, you know, these languages that we speak in here, I was given the great honor to cover the CEE, Eastern Europe, former CIS countries. So, very interesting work. I spent the last about 10 years traveling through these areas, pre-Baltics, Chernogoria, all the way up through Austria, and then Vladivostok, all the way through to Warsaw. So it's covering a lot of ground, very interesting. And of course, in the last 10 years, not only have we seen the ecosystem here blossom, much thanks to people like Growth Up and Dennis and Anna, who you just heard, and SVOD, which they're bringing here, and many, many other initiatives in this part of the world. And as you know, it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, right? Big governments like the Skolkovas, like the Rusnanos, like the big groups coming from the top down. We'll talk about that more again later. They're very, very important, but it's always difficult. It's always a challenge, right, to do. And of course, what we've seen a lot is waves, volny, of incredible immigrants coming into the Silicon Valley from this part of the world. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about today. What are some of the lessons learned? Who are these people? How are they succeeding or not succeeding? What are their tricks? What are some of the things that they do? So I'll cover this very, very quickly. So welcome to entry into the Silicon Valley, с китами поплавать, да, swimming with the big fish. What's it like? First of all, has the bubble burst in Silicon Valley? And the answer is definitely no. Definitely not, right? Вот очереди на Tesla, как всегда, вот очереди на Phil's Coffee, вот очереди на Highway 101 между Сан-Франциско и Silicon Valley. Anschlag. It's crazy what's happening there. And I don't think it's going to burst. It might deflate slightly. The unicorns might deflate slightly. But I don't think it's going anywhere. I think it's just going to get better. So it's a very interesting place to be right now. It goes a lot to say that culture, in a way, beats strategy. And Silicon Valley has a curious culture. And we've all heard about it. And I think you're trying to replicate it a little bit here, or you're doing your own version of it, right? This is Hogsworth painting from the 1600s, the Great Enlightenment, right? This was a public house in England in the 1600s, a great meeting of politicians and common people, of country and city, of rich and poor, of students and experienced people, all in one place. They switched from drinking ale to coffee. This is a whole other talk I do. If you want to hear more about it, find me on Google. They switched from that to coffee, a stimulant, right? And it was a rare meeting where a lot of different people got together in a very unique way. And what happens is that new ideas occurred, right? Откуда хорошие новые идеи происходят? У кого идеи есть? Where do great ideas come from, really? Everybody has their theories. It's one of the most important questions that we ask from venture capital, right? Especially early seed stage venture capital like we are. Where do you find great ideas? How do they come about? Can you create an environment where new ideas can actually happen more, right? It's a fundamental question. So we do a lot of research, actually. We work with folks like, well, you'll see our talks. We do a lot of research on where great ideas come from. And a lot of the thesis is that it's a way that neurons in your head fire in a new way that they've never fired off before, right? It's a way that people meet, new people that have never met before, and talk about something new, right? Similar to neurons. This is a coffee shop in Berkeley, right outside UC Berkeley. And you notice that things have changed from Hogsworth time, right? things have changed. What's changed? What have you noticed? Что здесь по-разному? Right? It's not face-to-face anymore, it's face-to-computer-to-face, or face-to-computer-to-computer-to-face, but it's still an interesting, lively ecosystem. Things are changing, right? We've in fact committed even to creating something like this on Strasnoy Boulevard in Moscow. We also have offices in Silicon Valley, Berlin, New York, Beijing, and of course in places like Kyiv through Growth Up, through Dear Partners, where people are meeting, и вещи кипятят, вещи бурлят, things are bubbling. Here's from last year, right? Things are bubbling here. Your challenge for today, I suppose, is to meet, as Anna said, to meet somebody new that you've never met before, here. If they're sitting right by you, turn to them, introduce yourself. You can almost do that. I won't do that now, but go out of your way to meet somebody new that you haven't before, right? It's that simple sometimes. New ideas come in that way. In Silicon Valley, things have also changed, right? Supposedly, this is Vinod Khoslas, who's a legendary founder of Khosla Ventures. He said that I won't invest into any company which I can't sit down into my car and drive 5 minutes to see. I won't invest in anybody who lives 10 minutes away. It's too far for me, right? And in fact, he could get away with it, right? Venture capital was right on Sand Hill, right? IP was right on the corner, if you've been to Silicon Valley, of Page Mill Road and El Camino around Wilson-Sonsini. There's Stanford with intellectual property, the university, right? There's management just down the road in Mountain View. Он может так сделать, right? He could get away with it, right? But now things have changed again. Remember the coffee shop in Berkeley? Here's what's happened, right? It's become global, and it's become global very fast, literally within my lifetime, and I'm not that old, in the last 5-10 years. It's pretty fascinating. И у нас очень богатая традиция вот таких событий. Были квартирники, надо было блат иметь, да, вот наши, может быть, даже родители или предки, надо знать, где молоко, в какой час, надо было знать зять, дочери, там, мужа. Надо было вот эти сети строить. Это было критично для выживления. You had to create this to survive, right? So we had a wonderful idea about this. And in fact, it's reflected here. We're #1 in the world, Eastern Europe, Russia, these areas, #1 in the world of time spent on social networks, right? We beat everybody. We're very, very good at social networks, right? It's the incredible need for connection. And it comes to themes like protection versus sharing, right? In a way, the spaceships are still flying. Ours are not. Our Buran, our space shuttles are not flying. But the challenge was that there was 30,000 spin-offs from our space program, right? And things like anti-reflective coating from lenses, the tennis shoes material, the batteries for drills, they all came out of the space program, but from this space program, we're not sure. Then there's the idea of slow hunches, right? That things don't happen all of a sudden. It takes a long time, right, to have things create in your brain. Then there's the idea of coming up with a new idea all by myself. I'm going to sit all by myself like Rodin's The Thinker and create this idea, like Newton, right, with the apple falling from his head, from the tree onto his head. That's not true either, right? New ideas come out of connections, out of synergies. You can't be the lone pine, right, in the hill and a new idea come for you. You can't even be a plantation. This is what government programs try to do in Germany, in Ireland, in Europe, in Skolkovo and Rosnano, right? They tried to make the roads. That's not where great ideas come from either. It's very difficult. Very good to build KPIs, but very difficult to great ideas. Here's where they come from, right? From coral reefs, from rainforests. They come where new plants, new organisms, new weeds almost. Facebook would be a huge weed, right? They would be culled out by the rows occur. Right, so these two pictures are very, very similar, right? And that's the ideas that we're trying to bring, and that's the ideas that very much historically exist in our part of the world here already, right? It's easy to build hardware, right? It's easy to hire the right people, build the right physical, beautiful spaces, create the right policy, but it's very difficult to do the software of ecosystems, right? Which is, how do you create diversity? How do you build motivation? How do you make social trust? And how do you create rules that can be broken? That's something Silicon Valley is very, very good at. So how do we come from one pond, right, into another pond, from this maybe more traditional pond into a wild, very, very radically diverse ecosystem that is Silicon Valley. Let's spend the last part of the presentation on that. Last year, if you remember, and if you haven't, Google it and you'll see it. We won't talk about it this year. We talked about the blossoming of Silicon Valley. It's insane. There's a lot of money out there. So we saw the slides. Early stage teal deck size trends are just going through the roof, right? People are spending a lot of money. Angels are spending a lot of money. Seed size deal is huge. We won't spend time on these slides. You can find them on the internet. The sectors or the variety of deals that investors are looking at is going. What groups or what stages are deals also investing? Who are the most active VCs? Just Google this or Yandex it or whatever. You'll find it, right? There's a lot of great venture capital, especially early stage venture capital out there. In fact, they've made the connections between craft beer. Кто здесь пиво любит пить? Right? It's a huge blossoming. You go down Whole Foods and there's huge aisles of crazy amounts of beer that's hand done in Silicon Valley. Very, very popular right now. I don't know what it's like here. And in fact, funny, crazy mathematicians or statisticians have built proportions, and they're not inverse proportions, between the amount of venture capital, especially micro venture capital, and the amount of beer, the types of beer and microbreweries happening in the Silicon Valley. So just for fun. The micro VCs, right? The venture capitals that have funds smaller than roughly 50 million are blossoming, right? Angels are kicking butt. If you look at this vis-a-vis the overall investment trends are incredible. Corporate venture arms are growing, right? Unicorns are blossoming. So we see all this stuff and we think people are selling houses not for money but for stock, right? Bankers, God forbid, are leaving banking to join high tech, right? Which is a very, very dangerous thing to do, right? A million guys walk into a Silicon Valley bar, nobody buys anything, bar declared a massive success, right? So these types of things start to happen, right? But ultimately, Mark Benioff from Salesforce, this is the largest wave of technology innovation in the history of the world. It's very, very exciting. It's not really a bubble. I mean, it might be a froth. It might be, especially on the top end with the unicorns, it might be far overvalued. But in the middle to the low end, it's actually happening. So the idea is, let's get into it. What are we doing sitting here? Let's get a piece of this, or pieces of the other ecosystems that are being built around the world. Poland's amazing, right? Chile's pretty interesting. Ireland's rocking. London's happening, right? All these other places around the world. And in fact, it seems like people are giving money. This is actually pretty normal for Silicon Valley. Pre-seed 500, pre-seed and seed are actually moving apart right now. So pre-seeds are getting to be almost as big as the seeds used to be. The seed rounds are getting north of 1 million. We just had a portfolio company raise 1.7 million as a seed stage investment coming out of 500 startups, which is crazy, I think, right? I mean, most European high-end seed stage rounds are about 500, right? So you can see the numbers, right? So we leave in pre-seed and seed, it's very, very much frothing, right? 1.2 million bucks, 1.5 goes into 2 range. And people are starting to raise this money concurrently, right? People are raising a pre-seed, getting into Y Combinator, and then raising another seed, right? Or they're raising 2 seeds, or they're raising bridges between seeds and Series A's, right? So all kinds of stuff happening. So the idea, the impression that some people get is that we'll show up, and there's going to be money just floating around us. We're just going to be taking money. We're having to bring extra suitcases for all the money we're going to be pulling out of Silicon Valley, right? We're going to show up and there's unicorns jumping around all over the place, right? And the truth is, the challenge is that nobody cares in Silicon Valley about us. They barely care about themselves. It's very hard to differentiate, even within Silicon Valley, which are top startups, right? It's kids in candy stores, the venture capital guys there. They're running around very, very spoiled, right? I work with funds, with venture capital funds who want to invest into Silicon Valley, and sometimes on the really good deals, you have to get on your knees and ask the startups, please take money from me, right? Literally, right? Please take some money from me because you guys are so hot. And they've, of course, you know, they have Sequoia, they have Khosla, they have Bessemer, right? Why would they take money from a little fund that's coming out of, right, Eastern Europe, Russia? They're like, why, right? We've got Bessemer. So it's a curious switch. So what do they care about? It is difficult, right? It's not the Silicon Valley of HBO, although there's some truth to this. And I know the author of it. And he just wrote a book. You should check it out. I don't know. Anyway, I'll go into that later. He worked part-time. He worked for a, I don't know if you've, do you know the screenwriter of this series? Google him on, Google the guy. He just wrote a book. He just worked as a journalist at HubSpot, and he wrote about his experience. Very, very interesting book about what's happening in Silicon Valley from that point of view. Dave McClure said, don't do it. Why should you do it? He says, because you will fail, you loser, right? And that's a very Dave McClure kind of attitude. Of course, he secretly thinks, of course, do a startup, and of course, come to us at 500. But he says, don't even think about it. It's so hard, right? What percent get funded? Very, very little. And this is from stats taken from Silicon Valley guys. So it's point something percent get funded if you're lucky. You know, there's a lot of wantrepreneurs, they're called, right? Wannabe entrepreneurs running around who say, wow, this is so cool, we'll make lots of money, and I don't really have a good idea, but I'll think of something, right? So it's not an easy path. And of course, a lot of people show up and they become tourists. They become Silicon Valley tourists, right? So you run around, you find a friend at Google, you see the place, you say, wow, this is cool. You take your photo up in front of the Facebook page, and then you leave, and you're excited, right? You got the idea, and it's not bad, right? Because then you come home and then you start to think about it, okay, I want to get into this, right? But it's also difficult, and to do well, it has to be planned out. There are a few plus points. We are standing on the shoulders of giants, and we really are. And I'll talk about this, why this is also difficult later, but the giants have come in 3 primary waves, and I won't spend too much time on it, but I'll give you a sampling. There is the дореволюционный во время революции, right? Amazing guys, Zvorkin, Pantayev, Sikorsky. In fact, Mr. Alexander Patayev, he founded Ampex. The sign, if you ever pass 101, is still on Highway 101. You'll see a big Ampex sign. Right? He basically started the industry of reel-to-reel recording and hard disk manufacturing. It was him coming out of the revolution. Brilliant, brilliant guys, and women actually then as well, but primarily men. So that Ampex sign is still in Silicon Valley. It's considered as he's one of the founding fathers of Silicon Valley, right? Then there's the second wave in the 1970s, roughly, right, that came out, and we heard their names. Sergey Brin, right? Max Levchin, who was part of the PayPal mafia, right? Started PayPal. Phil Lieben from Evernote, who, along with Steven Pachikov, raised money very early. In fact, I worked with Steven Pachikov and Apple when I was at Apple Computer, when he did a lot of the handwriting recognition technology, which we adopted for the Newton, which then eventually became the iPad. And of course, Vlad Shumas, who just did an interesting IPO a couple years ago for RingCentral. So Google these guys. They're amazing. They're heroes. They're from our part of the world, and they kicked ass there. But they came a long time ago. And they're, of course, of politics, right? Perhaps these guys really loved Russia, and they loved Ukraine, and they loved Eastern Europe, and they really revered it. And their kids actually are now coming back and helping this part of the world out, right? They're coming back to Ukraine. They're coming back to Prague and Odessa and Moscow, right, to help out. These guys, a little more politics, right? They're like, oh, Russia, we know Sergey Brin. We know actually, my board of advisors know his parents, right? And they say, Moscow, I'm not so sure. I don't want to come back, right? I'm not so excited about it. And perhaps for good reason, right? And then there's this current wave that's very, very interesting, and this is just a couple samples. You might have heard of them, and you know of many, many more, I'm sure. Ivan Sabayev and Max Skibinsky, who actually joined together to form Trucker Path, raised quite a few million, I think over 14 now, from primarily Andreessen Horowitz. Max, in fact, implanted himself into Andreessen Horowitz as a venture partner. Very clever, very sharp guy. Again, very skeptical about Russia. But Ivan, by the way, keeps all his R&D and keeps his biz dev, and not his biz dev, I'm sorry, his development team in this part of the world, because it's just so much radically cheaper. It's a really nice delta right now to do biz dev, to do sales there, make bucks, make бабки в еврох, в юанах, в долларах, и вообще копейки здесь платить. Нереально круто сейчас вообще. Даже в Москве, блин, копейки стоит, это все в шоке были. Никогда думали, ладно, из Беларуси, и Украины, и всех наших вот таких краев. И Андрей Филев, look him up. He just raised, I think, about 12 to 14 million for a group called Reiki. And there's many, many more. And there's, in fact, a huge wave coming over right now. And they all take, я маленький анекдот расскажу. Have you heard this one? 3 таких ям большие в аду, да? Первая яма, китайцы, маленький тур, там китайцы говорят, да, сидят, и они друг друга пытаются туда наверх вынести. И там с этими вилами стоят, их обратно туда толкают, заталкивают. Да? К второй яме подходят. А там индусы, да, тоже дофига их в Кремниевой долине. Китайцев, индусов просто, вот реально в школах сейчас публичных 98%, 95% of the public schools, они все оттуда, да, тоже блестящее образование, все туда переехали. И индусы там вот пытаются друг другу помочь там выйти из этой ямы, и там с вилами их обратно, да, суют, засовывают, заводят. А потом третья яма подходит, а там никого не стоит с вилами. И спрашивают там, а кто здесь сидит? Они говорят, а здесь русские, они сами друг друга там себя притягивают. Так прямо чуть-чуть печальная история. Конечно, политики здесь, мы стараемся от политики держаться, политики дофига, да, вот в нашем регионе стране, к сожалению, очень тяжелая судьба народа, людей, стран. И к чему это ведет, что надо друг другу помогать. The Thai community, which is the Indus community, the Indian community in Silicon Valley, is massive. Там их миллионы, они так друг другу помогают, они за шиворот друг друга вытягивают. They have their yearly annual conference at the Santa Clara Convention Center. 60, 70, 80,000 people show up, right? Chinese, same way. Ours, where is that group? SVOD, I think, is trying, thank goodness, right? Ambar, Growth Up, right? There's these groups that are trying to help each other out. We need to do more of it. So some paths. Как это люди делают? Первоначально это просто как employee. So Google hires engineers out of Kiev, out of Ukraine, out of Odessa, out of Lvov, out of all these places, right? They just show up at the coding conferences. You guys don't even finish the finals. They scoop you out in busloads, right? And you do a great job. Поцарапнуть чуть-чуть на поверхность всех больших IT-структуров. Кремниевый, Apple, Google, кого угодно, Yahoo. И блестящие инженеры там, очень уважаемые, они отсюда, они наши, да, они блестящее образование здесь получили, там они их на руках носят, реально. И недалеко не все, но кое-кто учится, акклиматизируется, и это на счет на копейку Google, да, из своего кармана, и они потихонечку начинают свой стартап. Неплохой ход. As a foreign entrepreneur, то есть здесь базироваться и туда приезжать and take that path. Not an easy path, but a lot of people are doing that. There's a third path. Билет купить и приехать. Very, very difficult. Could be fun if you have a few, maybe a good start, a good way to start. And then there's a fourth path, and I will take the last 3 minutes to talk about, and that's the one we help with usually. Just a couple data points. Илья Семин, Data Nice, кто-то слышал о нем? Так и думал. Короче, он приехал по первому пути, да, he became an engineer at Yahoo, literally built a startup in his basement, raised 2 million seed from amazing folks, Google Ventures, Mark Cuban, and IDG Ventures. He's only going to raise one round. That's it. He's not going to raise any more because he's already profitable. 25%, which is freaking insane, month-on-month growth. And he says, the biggest lesson I learned, if you want advice, ask for money. But if you want money, ask for advice. Very clever, I wrote. So very good kind of success story. И таких, как Илья, дюжина там. Просто о них надо больше писать и слушать. Они реально герои народа, они супер. И они друг другу помогают, они нам помогают, мы им помогаем тоже. Вы, конечно, наверняка знаете о PetCube, right? Через Y Combinator перешли в последнем классе. Сейчас еще одна. Мы помогаем. Я менторую I'm a mentor for Y Combinator and 500 startups both, as well as Blackbox, Google for Entrepreneurs, a couple other folks. So we work very closely with Accelerator, and sometimes we help startups go into there. That's a very grand entrance into Silicon Valley, of course. They got in themselves. YC just asked us for a little bit of due diligence about them beforehand, and we said, absolutely, yes, these guys are fantastic, right? So they did a long route, right? They did the Kickstarter campaign, right? They did local fundraising from folks like A Ventures, which are here somewhere, which are fantastic, right? Almaz Capital, Y Combinator kicked in. And so they raised about 3.8. Ну, очень тяжело, да, потому что, it's B2C. Если вы думаете, B2C в Америке попробовать или в любой другой стране, очень тяжело. Безусловно, это местное тяжело, да. Надо язык, надо тонкости знать, надо onboarding знать, надо очень много всего. But they're doing it, I guess. Hardware element is difficult and massive squeeze to margins. But then there's the fourth path, which is the following, and I won't spend much time on it. It's a curated way, and it's happening a lot right now. So this is the path, and we could spend another 2 hours on this, but this is the path that my group works with. We work primarily with funds and governments, but we also sometimes help startups, and this is how we do it. Sorry. So you plan ahead, you spend lots of time on planes, you must create a presence. In fact, you must get customer traction. You must get it. That's what you do first in the US, not here. You can do it here, obviously, and здесь подводные камни все почувствовать. Но чтобы там поднять деньги, они не просто так свалятся с головы, надо обязательно там traction пойти. И это трудно сделать, это возможно, и это тем более в таком мире сейчас, где самолеты сейчас летают туда-сюда, и Skype, и все действует, это абсолютно возможно. Generate momentum and make Silicon Valley part of your routine. You go in cycles. You build a business, you get the product market fit, you build a distribution, do a business model. Мы здесь не будем долго время тратить. Got it. And you start to create the momentum. The key is to get the first users, to do customer development in the Silicon Valley as soon as you can. Because what happens then is that you start to build this triangle. You get the early adopters and customers there, and venture capital, press, and especially the markets start to hear about you. And you do this visit. You set up, you visit, and you follow up. And you do this in cycles, right? A lot of people say, I'm going to wait till my product is perfect. No, go now. Go as soon as you can, or at least get in touch with people. Go talk to people here who have been there. Talk to Dennis and Growth Up, who do it all the time. The setup, it's always good timing. Identify those guys, those partners here from now. You got to do your research here. You can't just show up and expect the money to pour in. It's about 6 weeks. Visit for at least 4. Have an anchor of some kind of conference or some kind of base piece set up. So plan and ask for help. The visit, know your story, right? You have to build those relationships already from here, and then you come in and then you have the meeting. You don't show up and say, oh, shoot, who should I meet with, right? You set that up from here. It's possible. Ask for advice. That's something we do a lot because we have a very big network there. You get these meetings, and you allow for a little bit of unplanned time, потому что там столько интересных встреч просто так на самом деле происходит. And you meet some investors, but make these friendly chats. You're not pitching them for money. It's like a sexy girl, right? You don't say, hey, can I get your number? You say, hey, you look cute, and then you kind of walk away, and she goes, he didn't ask my number. That's interesting. I want to know more about him, right? That's exactly the same with investors. They're so tired of pitching, right? We're tired of pitching, but you say, here's, by the way, what I'm doing, and check me out, right? And then you go away, and then you ping them. You come back and forth like this, and you ask for even more help. And then, of course, you follow up, as Anna so wonderfully talked about earlier before and you plan the next trip. So you do this in cycles, right? Noam Bartz, a great entrepreneur from Waze, from Israel, talks about the risk of not being in Silicon Valley is too great. You got to at least have exposure, because what it is, it's a cross-check on what the trends are. It's a cross-check on who the big fish are. It's a cross-check who are your competitors, so you don't show up like a lot of people do and say, oh my God, I have 30 competitors, and the technology that I'm working on, that I spent like 5 years working on, has been done 20 years ago, right? That's the danger. Silicon Valley, perhaps there's other hotspots, I'm sure there are, right? Chile, Ireland, London. A lot of these places are hotspots. Kyiv, in a way, right, is a hotspot, just to cross-check yourself. Понять, что вы не в пузыре живете, да, что мы что-то делаем, что реально понятно, проблема есть, и другие решения. So a lot of best practices. Take a photo of this if you can. I'm not going to get through to it too much, but this is what we work on with startups. And this presentation will hopefully be available online as well. Number 7, you got to get out of the building. You got to get out of our comfort zone. We got to get out of our current state to find out what it is. We do too few product service concepts. We have too few interactions with customers, right? We don't build sufficient prototypes, and we test our prototypes with too few users, or they're local users, they're not global users. So these are really key points for startups. This is all doable virtually, and this is the 4th path that we help people on. Common pitfalls, this is too long a list and I'm running out of time, I'm sorry. But last 2 here, in your pitches, just 2 things really quickly. Please don't show us top market number. Say, I have a $3 billion market, right? My startup is gonna go into a $20 billion market. That gets you to the exit door, that's bullshit, right? The market is what you can sell to. It's a bottom-up market. So what the key is for YC, for 500, for everybody, is that curve, is that traction. So who are you getting traction with now? Who are you speaking with? How big can you get it? And how can you scale on that, right? That's the key. And if you show us how you're gonna exit, they'll show you the exit door. They know, most investors know how you're gonna exit much better than most times you are. Pilot it at home. So very, very quick tour, галопом по Европе на самом деле. Ну, очень реально это сделать, и это не переезжать туда, в Кремниевую, это реально циклировать, это иметь здесь огромный presence и иметь там тоже присутствие, хоть виртуальное, хоть онлайн, время от времени приезжать, чуть-чуть подталкивать, друзей там сделать, интересных контактов. И мир мал, он реально мал становится, еще меньше и меньше. И без этого мы очень рекомендуем вот этот подход. И до нас очень много интересных людей это уже сделали. И вот реально сейчас такая волна вот наших приезжает туда. Очень многие мучаются, и очень многим трудно, и у нас сердце обливается, потому что, блин, крутые ребята не подготовились, и там пытаются выпрыгнуть, да. Но есть вот, ну, очень многие, конечно, приезжают и шикарно, это радикальный миноритет, но шикарно вступают. И вот есть вот этот четвертый путь сейчас, где если подготовиться чуть-чуть, если аккуратно подготовиться, если посоветоваться вот с Growth Up, с нами, вот с такими, тем более, кураторами, которые им помогают, с друзьями, которые этот путь прошли, у нас уже масса там накапливается, критическая, может быть, даже скоро масса. Мы очень просим всем работать вместе, конечно, не друг друга избивать, но возможность все лучше и лучше становится, и рынок там хорош. То есть, если другие еще вопросы, я очень перешел мое время уже, поймайте, и буду рад быть в помощи.